here and welcome Paul Bassat. Here we go, come on. Paul, thank you for coming.
It's a pleasure. Looking forward to it.
So we're just going to jump straight in. You got such a, I had to read your bio quite a few times. I wanted to make sure I got, touched on a few of these just major things. But can we go back just quickly, your education? Tell me about your education. What kind of gave you that entrepreneurial bug? And then, anything to do with your family, whatever. I'm always interested to see if it was like, your father was an entrepreneur or your mother or something.
Yeah, look, I mean, interesting. I don't think there's, in my case, I had a pretty normal childhood. My parents were both migrants. They came to Australia. My mum is fairly young. She was probably about 8 or 9 when she came to Australia, and she was a Holocaust survivor. My dad came here in the teens. Came in here in his teens. And I think one of the things for people who are either migrants or the children of migrants, I think you're very conscious of the fact, that just what an amazing country this is and how lucky we are to be living in Australia. I mean, this is an amazing country. You have to read the newspaper every day to know how many terrible things are going in so many parts of the world and how privileged we are to grow up in this country. And obviously it's something you can take for granted. But compared certainly to my parents, I had a very normal, idyllic childhood and went to school here, studied law commerce at Melbourne Uni, and was a lawyer for 6 years, which I enjoyed, and had the idea one day for Seek, sort of out of the blue. I wasn't really looking for. I wasn't really looking for an idea. It wasn't like I was sort of saying, "Gee, I'm going to go and set up a business. I need to come up with a good idea." And it was much more a case of having the idea one day and spending a lot of time thinking about it, and then my brother Andrew and I mentioned it to my brother, and we started putting together a business plan, and then we...
Can I cut you off there real quick?
Yeah, of course you can.
Because we jumped ahead, we missed a lot here. Is there... Yeah, we have. I can't go straight into Seek like that. Was there... Yeah, we've got an hour to fill here, man.
Lucky I went to the toilet before.
So, can you give me so you were at a law firm for 6 years, whatever. Was there any businesses in between? Because usually, every other entrepreneur I've got up here, they've had 1 or 2 failures. Somebody that wants to sell art online. There were always some crazy ideas. Was there something along the way that you learned from, or just something?
Look, a little bit. I mean, I did when I was at uni. I really. I had a few different part-time jobs when I was at uni, and the usual stuff and telemarketing and this and that and whatever. And the only thing that I did that was sort of an entrepreneurial thing was organise a guy I'd seen at the beer garden in Surfers Paradise. He was amazing. He was this really charismatic sort of guy, and we brought him down. My then girlfriend Sharon and now wife and I brought him down to Melbourne, and we organised some concerts, and that paid for an overseas trip. So that was the sum total of my entrepreneurial and music career up to that point. So.
Yep, all right. So, straight into Seek after that, is that right? So
yeah, so straight from...
It was 97 anyway, so it was not too...
It was 97, that's exactly right. It was November 97, I was 29. Our second child, Jasmine, was born that year. It was a big year. I mean, I was really busy at work, and it was a really kind of... The whole process for us setting up Seek was kind of quite linear, and I think very different to the way in which people, by and large, would do startups today. I had an idea, I started talking to Andrew about it. We started putting together a business plan on nights and weekends. We went off and spoke to guys about funding us, and literally the first and only people we spoke to were Irvin and Matt Rockman, who are clients of my law firm. Matt is my age, and his late father, Irvin, was, at that time in his sort of early 60s. And they backed us, and Irvin said, I want to come and join, Matt said, sorry, I want to come and join you guys as a founder, and the three of us got going in late 97. So it was kind of linear, and the whole way we went about it, the whole way in which we built the website and all that sort of stuff is very different then to how, by and large, you would do things today.
But how did the concept come about? Was it a problem, a frustration?
Yeah, absolutely. It was I think often, and again, there's no one way in terms of sort of people go about with ideas to set up businesses, but often the most authentic way is a personal experience or the experience that a friend's had or a family member's had. And so in my case, it was the frustration actually of looking for a house. And so the original idea was for an online real estate site, not a job site. And the idea literally came. the idea literally came at an auction one day.
Keep going.
Looking to buy a house, and hard to keep focused here. And that's all right. And looking to buy a house, and just had the idea, and it morphed over time from real estate into jobs.
Was that because you weren't getting anyone on the real estate side?
No, this was well before we got started,
Okay.
and you know, the reason we decided on jobs rather than real estate, and frankly, the guys at REA have done a pretty damn good job. So you know, it was obviously a very good market opportunity as it turned out, but we much preferred the dynamics of the employment market. It was a much more inefficient market, and as a market maker, as a marketplace, the more inefficient the market, the more value you can add, was number one. And number two, we didn't like the fact that there were very strong, powerful franchise players. Again, we felt that the fragmentation on the recruitment side, both among recruitment firms, but also obviously a lot of companies do their own recruitment. So you have enormous demand side fragmentation and enormous supply side fragmentation. And we thought that was kind of a real positive about employment, and that was the primary reason why we chose employment rather than real estate as our vertical.
And you started this business with your brother. Now, I got my mum here tonight. She doesn't come very often, so hang on. And she'll attest to this. So I work with my brother, and we're practically almost killing each other. 3 days of the week. So how has it been working with your brother?
Yeah, no, it was interesting, and it was sort of a family business. You had a father and son as chairman and one of the founders, and two brothers as the two other founders. So it was kind of interesting. And by and large, the three of us, which was, you know, Matt was there when we started in '97, and he left in 2006. So the first 9 years there were three of us, and then the next 5 years was just Andrew and I. And yeah, it was a really interesting dynamic. I mean, you know, Andrew's you know, is super smart. You know, absolutely super smart, very, very strategic. Done an outstanding job from day one. But I mean, the business has obviously flourished incredibly, you know, in the period since I've left. But we think about things quite differently. I think our skills, I think the skill sets of the three of us and the two of us were very, very complementary. So that was kind of good luck more than anything else. But it also kind of means that because we think about things differently, the three of us think about things differently, the two of us, yeah, you don't always agree on things.
Yeah, I know that. So you started this Seek with your brother. How long are you into this before you go, well, I'm onto something, or you know, you had to have your first hire? What was a big milestone for you after you started?
Yeah, I mean, again, really different. I mean, we raised a bunch of money initially, quite a lot. I mean, given this was, what's this now, 17 years ago now nearly, and it was really just a kind of seed stage. And you know, in Australia, people didn't talk about seed and Series A and Series B then. It was kind of just investing in a startup. So we raised quite a lot. We raised $1.5 million, which was an enormous leap of faith by Irvin and Matt to invest that amount in the business as a startup. And we kind of built the website. We brought together a team. We sort of launched in November. Sorry, we started the business November '97. We launched in March '98. There was probably about 10 of us by then. The big gap, obviously, in terms of our capability was none of us were engineers. So the first hire was our head of IT, which was a really critical hire, a guy called Rob Sloan, who made an enormous contribution to the business in the first few years. So that was a super important hire, and de-risking in that area. Launched March. And you know, the thing about marketplace businesses, and you know, something like the 99 Designs guys would have found as well. I mean, marketplace businesses are great when they're working. The question is, how do you get them working from scratch? So the challenge for us from day one was, you know, we want to attract a bunch of job seekers, people to look for jobs on Seek, but there were no jobs. You want to get recruitment firms to advertise. Sorry, man, we can't hear you. I'm really struggling to hear you.
Where's my buddy so-so? Can you help me with that?
Should we ditch the mic? Maybe we'll ditch the microphone. Can you hear me?
No, you just put it right up.
How's that?
Oh, there you go. All right.
How's that? Is that better? Hello? Hello?
Talk directional to the top.
Maybe that's better.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you. Apologies.
Sorry, guys.
Thanks for letting me know. Should we start again?
Yeah. Yeah, we're on to Seek already.
We're on. Yeah. So that was a good session. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. From time to time, we make some mistakes, but
Well, my mistake. So what I was saying, put your hand up again if I do it again. It's my bad habit, apologies. And I'll try not to, I feel like I've got my back to this part of the room as well, so that's not perfect either, so I will try to sort of shuffle around. But, you know, the challenge on day one is you start with no jobs and you start with no job seekers, and that's the case of any marketplace business. And so you need jobs to attract the job seekers and you need job seekers to attract the jobs, and that's kind of the sort of the chicken and egg question. And that was kind of the, you know, that was really in a nutshell was the challenge for the first few years.
how did you solve that?
Well, a couple of ways. I mean, and Matt looked after the sales side, and so it was about identifying, particularly it was on the recruitment firm side, they were kind of the wholesale providers, if you like. They could provide us with large volumes in sort of in one go rather than sort of small volumes from individual companies. So we focused mainly on the recruitment firms. And in any industry, you have people who are early adopters. You have people who are kind of happy to try a new way of doing things. But we very much sold Seek not as a substitute medium, but a supplementary medium to newspaper advertising. So if we'd gone along to all these recruitment firms and said, look, you know what, you should try advertising on Seek. There's this new thing called the internet that you haven't heard of. There's this new site called Seek that you definitely hadn't heard of. You've been advertising in newspapers for 100 years. Why don't you stop advertising in newspapers? Everyone would have said, you're crazy. Instead, we identified people who were prepared to take risks and try things, people who could go to their clients and say, there's this new thing called the internet. I'm still doing the things I've always done in terms of advertising in the newspaper and all the different things I try to do to get candidates. But there's these young, tech-savvy people who are on the internet. I'm going to try advertising on this new thing called Seek to see if we can get some additional candidates who are on this thing called the internet.
And I imagine that early on you were saying, trying to sell it maybe that it was a fraction of the price of...
It was, yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us, it was kind of beg, borrow or steal ads. So, you know, if we had to give the ads away to get them on the database, absolutely, we would do that. You know, we understood it was about liquidity. It was about getting job ads up, setting realistic expectations around the sorts of results. And I'll come back to the job seeker side in a moment, but you know, it was really very much about, you know, doing whatever we could to get those ads up. We launched on the 16th of March, 98, which I'm pretty sure was a Monday. It was either a Monday or a Tuesday, but I think it was a Monday. And we basically on the Friday, one of our sales guys, we only had two at that stage, one of our sales guys rang and said, I've signed up this huge client, Chandler and McLeod, who are a very well-known recruitment firm, one of the bigger Australian recruitment firms. And Chandler and McLeod sort of faxed to us, this is like, you know, this is bizarre, faxed to us photocopies from the newspaper of about 300 ads. Some of them were from like 1994, they were like 4 years old. And we spent that weekend typing up 300 ads onto Seek. And we had about 350 ads on Seek and 300 of them were for Chandler and McLeod, so it was pretty cool.
It's a startup thing, right?
It's a startup thing, whatever it takes.
Yep, that's it. Now, we're okay now? Yeah. Now, so, but in terms of like, when, I guess, if you already had a bit of money to start with, when were your investors happy? How should I say, like, what did it go? When did you think, oh, I got enough traction, I'm gonna make money out of this? And
yeah, I mean, what we thought and what our investors thought probably was slightly different at different times, in the sense that I would say probably about a year in, so early 1999. I think we sort of came to the view, you know what, this is starting to work. One of the things in our first 12 months is the churn was awful. So you'd be, you know, signing up new clients, and 2 months later they'll be churning because they'd say this is terrible, it doesn't work. Again, it's one of the aspects of marketplace businesses. If you don't have those job seekers, if you don't have that liquidity, you don't get the results. And so, you know, basically advertisers were just constantly churning. We'd bring on every month, you know, it'd be 1 step forward, 2 steps back, or in a good month, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And it was probably about January, February, March 99 that we started to get some better results for advertisers, the volume of job seekers applying for jobs. One of the things Andrew was responsible for was the strategic side of the business and the partnership side. We put in place a partnership with 90% very early, and that was super important. Look smart, use the then search engines such as Alta Vista, etc. So those distribution relationships, etc., were really, really important. And that was probably the period when we were starting to get a little bit of traction. The business didn't get profitable itself. It took about 4 years to get to profitability. But a year in, I think we felt that there's really something in this. It's starting to work.
Can I also ask, because you kind of pointed out something that I know, and I'm guessing when it's you with your VC hat on, it's a bit of a no-no, I guess, in the industry not have a technical co-founder. Or it's just, I think Mark Suster from LA is the only one that says, hire a co-founder. But other than that, most investors want to see you have a technical guy. So in the first year of, where you're slugging it out, you must have come across some technical issues.
Yeah, we had, it was a real issue for us. So I think, I certainly think other things being equal, having an engineering co-founder is definitely a lot better than not having an engineering co-founder, and even better than that is having a good engineering co-founder. But it was tough for us. It was really tough. There was a period, there was a period, I think it was early-ish 1999, I can't remember, but in fact it was January 99. We hadn't, one of the things about our business is we didn't even know the monthly cycles and stuff and how it worked and the seasonality in the business. And unbeknownst to us, lots and lots of people look for jobs in January. It's the peak season for people to look for jobs. Now, we hadn't obviously gone through a January because we started in March. And so Christmas comes and traffic dives, and then about the 6th or 7th of January, traffic just goes through the roof. And particularly because we're growing so fast anyway, it kind of just literally went through the roof. And our servers fried. And we just couldn't cope with the traffic. And we kind of had a whole month where it was really, really suboptimal performance for basically anyone coming to the site. Lucky the absolute numbers weren't that big, and lucky it was 1999 and people's expectations were kind of, they were kind of used to that sort of thing. But yeah, it was certainly a challenge for us. And I think generally, and I think the organisation's got a lot better. Probably in my last year or two, we started to get better, and I think the organisation's got a lot better again from what I know since I've left. But we were never, kind of engineering. We were clearly not an engineering-led organisation, and I think we were always very good at the sales and marketing, product piece, strategically. From an engineering perspective, we weren't great, and that always held us back a little bit.
Yeah, well, there's, I think Alan can attest to this. How much do you think that, marketing and sales should be driving these businesses? Because sometimes you go to these co-founder events and stuff now, and you got a surplus of business and marketing guys, and you got technical co-founders that are like, this is my idea, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, I think the answer really depends business by business. So what is the differentiation? Is the differentiation something to do with the software and the code and the ability to kind of just sort of move really, really quickly from a product and software perspective? Or is the product essentially kind of the same as every other folk out there, and it's really just about your distribution and your sales and marketing and execution? So I think it really varies business by business. And so one of the things we try to understand when we're looking at businesses is what is going to be the differentiating factor that is going to make this business, or in this space, player A succeed versus players B, C and D. And I think it really varies. And the importance of engineering, frankly, varies enormously. But as a broad generalisation, I think we have less kind of engineering-led businesses in this country than, say, in other markets. I think a lot of ours are kind of sort of more marketing-led or sales-led. But we've had a lot of marketplace-type business in this country. Obviously, real estate and car sales and 99 Designs and Freelancer and Envato. We've had a lot of these marketplace-type businesses. In some cases, they've been founded by engineers, but that tends to be our sweet spot rather than really heavy-duty, deep, complex, sophisticated technology, but by and large.
Sure. So let's get back onto Seek, sorry for a minute again. Seek, so 4 years in, become profitable. When, if I got this right, you're the biggest employment site in the world.
But by market cap, Seek's now the biggest employment business here.
So tell me a little bit about going international, about some of the problems you face, just scaling in general. Like I think a lot of guys want to like, how do you make that leap? What are some of the teething problems that these guys could perhaps avoid?
Yeah, and again, our experience was probably a little bit atypical, because I think for a lot of businesses today, you think kind of global or regional from day one. And particularly the nature of the businesses, it kind of makes sense for you to think global from day one, partly because of the size of the opportunity, but also kind of because there aren't really geographic constraints, etc. For us, there were kind of two things that made us decide to focus locally initially. One is that classifieds are about depth rather than breadth. And so you want to be number one. You want to be number one in a market. There is a disproportionate prize for being number one compared to number two. Usually it's not a lot of fun being number two in any classifieds market in a given geography, in a given market. And it's certainly no fun being number three. So really, really important to be number one. So we kind of took the view, better to be number one in one country, and the Australian market was really big. I mean, it was $800 million of revenue we were going after. So really important to be number one, firstly, but secondly, you need a local presence on the ground. I mean, these businesses require sales teams that are about building relationships with recruitment firms, with corporates. It's a long, hard, slow slog. So it was our first, it was really only about 2004, 2005 that we started. That was about 6 years in. That we expanded New Zealand early on, but beyond New Zealand, it was only about 6 years in that we started thinking about other geographies, and that has come about purely by acquisition rather than organic growth.
Well, that's perfect. I mean, can you tell me about some of those acquisitions?
Yeah, it's a number of acquisitions, and Andrew very much led the charge in terms of our international growth. We focused on, first acquisition was in Brazil. We bought a 20 or 25% stake initially in a business that effectively was the two leading websites in Brazil that have been brought together, Catho and Manager. We then made an acquisition in China of a 25% stake in Zhaopin, which just IPO'd this week on the last week on the New York Stock Exchange, which is really cool. And we made some subsequent investments in Mexico through Southeast Asia, but we made relatively small initial stakes, and then we would continue to increase. And now each of those businesses, the ownership stake varies, but in each case it's a controlling stake, more than 51%. We have partners in a number of those businesses. So, for example, in JobsDB in Hong Kong, the partners originally were Tiger Global, James Packer, and Macquarie Bank. And James's shares now been bought by News Corp when Consolidated Media got sold. And so we've partnered in a number of markets. And yeah, look, it was really. There were a lot of mistakes along the way. I mean, my main focus was China, so I spent a lot of time in the Chinese market. And, it's a really great story. We're really excited about where the business has got to. It's now got a $1 billion or $900 million market cap, or maybe over $1 billion actually. And, but, the progress was far from linear. We had to fire 2 management teams, the second of which was kind of trying to steal the business from us, and it was difficult. It was really hard, and we learned a lot along the way. But it was an incredibly exciting experience operating in China. My view, and I'm biased, my view is the 2 great stories of our lifetime, of the last 20 years, are the rise of the internet and the emergence of China. And I just feel it's an incredible privilege to have had the opportunity to have had an involvement in both of those great mega trends over the last 20 years.
How many people have you got in China now?
Well, yeah, and when you say we, I mean, I'm obviously well out of sync. I left 3 years ago, but there was probably about 3,000 or 4,000 people in the business in China. So it's big business, mainly sales guys.
Wow. Was there ever a case where where it wasn't an acquisition? You've got a lot of these startups with these rollout strategies where they going to send 2 guys over to this particular city, and they're going to get settled in and then start growing the team. Was there anything that happened like that? Yeah, no.
All of the stuff we did in the online employment area was via acquisition, because again, we got into these markets 2004, 2005, and subsequent years, and so there were already a bunch of players in those markets, and so to come in from outside with no job seekers, I mean, kind of to try to do what we'd done in Australia in 1997. 7 years early, when there were existing established players, would have been impossible. And so the entry route was via acquisition. That was the absolutely logical way to go into the market, and on the whole, it's worked really, really well.
Brilliant. Okay, so Brazil, China. Can I also ask, because I know that I can't remember the name of the team. I want to say Monster. Was it Monster? Was it
Monster? Yeah, Monster.
Yeah. So can you just talk quickly about what it's like when you have a big company from the US or whatever that has market? I imagine they had the biggest market share in the US. Is now coming into your territory. What was that day like? I know that you won. We all know that you won the battle, but yeah.
Yeah, look, it was really interesting. I mean, we were obviously, Monster was kind of sort of the 800-pound gorilla. They were the dominant player in the US. They were in about 30 countries, had a big reputation. Here, and what happened is pretty early on, in about 99, what was then PBL Online, it became eCorp. eCorp kind of approached us about investing in Seek, and they wanted to acquire I think a 25 or 30% stake. And we had a bunch of dialogue with them, and we really, to be frank, it wasn't a great dialogue. We found the guys, to be completely candid, a little bit aggressive. We didn't feel there was a lot of alignment there. And we were in a difficult bind because on the one hand, we had this super important distribution partnership with 9MSN, which generated 20 or 30 or 40% of our traffic. And 9MSN's 50% shareholder, eCorp, was coming to us saying, guys, we want to buy a third of your company or 30% of your company. And we kind of knew that if we didn't do it, it was going to create problems. But we walked away from that deal, and then eCorp ended up buying a share of Monster in Australia and also in various markets through Asia. And so that was kind of a difficult thing for us because in one foul swoop we lost that 9MSN distribution, they gained it. But frankly, they executed pretty poorly in Australia. They executed pretty poorly globally. I remember having and again, I don't say this to be hairy-chested in any way, but I remember having a conversation with one of the guys from Monster, and he said, we'd really be interested in talking to you about buying your business. And I said, look, we feel as though there's a lot of growth in our business. We're not looking to sell. And he said, no, but I'm not talking about paying cash. We'd buy shares, and however fast your business is going to grow in the next 10 years, Monster will grow faster, and you guys will do really well. And at that point, Seek was probably worth, $20 or $30 million, maybe a little bit more. And Monster, I think, had a market cap of about $6 billion. Today in 2014, Seek's market cap $6 billion and Monster's is $800 million. And so our value's gone up probably 200 times, and theirs have gone down by nearly 90%. And the reason why I mention is this stuff's really, really hard. I mean, you've got to be, the timing's got to be good. You've got to be lucky. Opportunities have to fall in place. You obviously need a good team, and Monster did a lot wrong, but I mean, they probably had a pretty good opportunity to be a dominant player in a lot of markets around the world, including potentially Australia, but certainly the US.
Right. Well, let's jump off Seek for a little bit because you're a man of many talents. Let's talk about you're on the commission for the AFL. I'm from Sydney, so I don't really care too much for it. But
you're not watching State of Origin tonight. That's how committed you are to start-up grind.
That's true. But can you tell me a little bit about your involvement in the AFL and then the Peter MacCallum Foundation, which must be a great passion of yours, and just a little bit of the things that you're doing outside, and then I'll get into Square Peg.
Sure. Yeah. No. AFL. I've been doing now. I mean, the two main things I do out in terms of time commitment. The two main things I do outside Square Peg, and Square Peg is very much my day job. But the two main things I do are AFL, which I've now been doing for 2.5 years, and I'm on the board of Wesfarmers, which I've been doing for a bit over 18 months. And so that's obviously a very, very different experience for me, dealing with a company that owns big, large organisations, legacy businesses like Coles and Target and Bunnings, etc. And chemical businesses. It's a very, very different set of experiences. And I've really enjoyed both the AFL and Wesfarmers, and I've learned a lot, and I think amazing people involved in both organisations, and yeah, it's been a great experience. and then a few not-for-profit organisations, Peter Mac being one. I'm on the foundation, on the board of the foundation there, and thank you for the donation. And no, again, it's obviously a great organisation, as you say. It's you know, cancer is something that that touches the lives of you know, of a lot of people, just about everyone through their lifetime in one form or another. And you know, they're building together with Melbourne Uni and Royal Melbourne Hospital a quite amazing new facility just up the road in Parkville. But it's a really unique institution, Peter Mac. It's one of the few hospitals, or one of the few cancer facilities in the world that is both an integrated clinical and research facility. It's quite unusual in the US model. Typically, you either have research or you have clinical. The two don't usually go together, and the kind of the integrated nature of it makes it a really unique facility.
And how do you find, like, do you enjoy a lot, like in these kind of, you know, giving back when you're giving back and these kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make like a big deal about it. I think, I'm sure everyone here, I mean, you know, people involved in this organisation, a lot of people give back to the community in one form or another, involved in... So how are you going hearing me back there? I feel like I'm struggling with this. It's okay? More or less? More or less, by the sound of it. Every second word? You know, I mean, people give to their, you know, involved in their kids' football team, you know, in all sorts of different not-for-profit organisations, whether it's with their time, financially. So I think all of them, I mean, we live in an incredible country, and I think all of us have an obligation to the extent we can to try to make a contribution. I mean, a lot of people make a lot bigger contribution than I do.
Sure. Well, you're pretty humble. Well, I'll take that. So let's talk about Seek. When did it? Was it like, you know, I'm looking for the next challenge now, or what was the inspiration? Or I want to give back to the startup community. What was the inspiration about starting SquarePeg? Tell me a little bit about getting that started. Welcome to talk about some of these big investors you got if you want.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think for me, I mean, it was a much more decision around making a decision to leave Seek rather than a decision to do something else. I mean, the two were quite separate processes, and deliberately so. And you know, I got to a point, and you know, it's not you know, you don't wake up one morning. It's a process over a period of a year or two where, you know, I think if I was being honest with myself, I wasn't as passionate about the job. I was as passionate about the company. I was as passionate about the people. It's like a family. It's an extraordinary place. But I probably got to a point where I felt like my energy to do the job to the best of my ability was probably drifting a little bit. And, you know, it was an incredible experience, and I made a decision that I would prefer look back and say, you know, maybe I left a year or two too early, than make a decision and say, you know, maybe I stayed a year or two too long. You know, obviously, you know, it's a sort of a trite comment, but, you know, life's not a dress rehearsal. And I felt it was time to do some new things in my life. And, you know, and as much as I miss Seek, because it was an important part of my life, I'm absolutely loving what I'm doing and feel very blessed.
Is your brother running it now?
Yeah, Andrew, absolutely. Andrew runs it. And so he and I were after Matt left, Andrew and I became joint CEOs. And Andrew's been running it solely on over the last, it's now a little bit over 3 years since I left.
So, on to SquarePeg. I've got a couple of the guys here too. I've had Gavin on stage before. Thanks for coming.
Did a good job?
He did a brilliant job.
Good.
It's one of the biggest events we had. Can you tell me about SquarePeg? You know, a lot of people probably knocking on your door. A lot of our audience wants to knock on your door, come see you. Can you talk about the progression of SquarePeg, I guess? I know you were investing in a lot of early on. Now you're looking more at guys with a bit of traction. So generally, just how did you get started, and what are you looking for?
Yeah, it sort of came about, actually, sort of two separate conversations and two separate vehicles. I took 6 months off after I left Seek and came back to Melbourne, a bit over 2.5 years ago, beginning of 2012, and a couple of conversations, one with Justin Lieberman and Barry Brott from Jagan, who were early investors in Seek, and secondly with another old friend of mine, Tony Holt, who's an old school friend who was in investment banking. and led to sort of formation of 2 vehicles. One with Justin and I was just investing our own money and became Square Peg Ventures, and pretty early stage seed, Series A, etc. And secondly, with Tony, sort of focused on more growth stage investments we call Victoria Capital. And sort of a year or so, or even less, but yeah, about a year or so in, we talked about, it was mainly at Justin's initiative, we talked about bringing together. Dan joined the team, well, Dan was actually across both like me and joined sort of late-ish 2012. Gav joined about a year, basically exactly a year ago. And we brought the 2 together pretty much sort of, early to mid last year. Focused from sort of Series A and beyond. So for us, sweet spot is Series A right through to growth stage. The primary consideration is about the people, so looking for outstanding entrepreneurs who are solving, big problems in a differentiated way. It's really simple.
And can you tell me some of the exciting companies that you've invested in? I want to say Canva's one of them?
Yeah, Canva's one of them.
What's it like to have Guy Kawasaki?
Yeah, I haven't actually met Guy, but he looks very cool, and he's got 800 million Twitter followers, or thereabouts.
So what is it like when Guy Kawasaki endorses a product?
Well, it's not out.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. I think they're a great team. So we invested in Canva now probably 18 or 20 months ago. We've now subsequently invested a second time. It was really just an idea at that point. Again, we were doing some seed stage stuff then. Very strong team. Interesting example, 2 co-founders, Melanie and Cliff, who were advised you need to go out and find a tech co-founder by Lars Rasmussen, who was sort of a mentor to Melanie and Cliff. They went out and found Cameron, who was with Google. He was part of the Google Wave team up in Sydney, and he'd been previously sort of doing some stuff with his own startup, and they got started. And again, we liked the business because great team, enormously passionate. Kind of requires a bit of front to ring up someone like Guy Kawasaki. They saw that Guy Kawasaki was a user, and they're like, hey, this is really cool. Guy Kawasaki's using our product. Why don't we ring him and offer him a job? And in the Australian kind of vernacular, for a lot of us, we'd kind of be like, oh, this guy's not going to be interested, and the fear of rejection, and and they just went and did it, and which is really, really cool. So great team solving an important problem, which is that all of us kind of have design needs. All of us as amateurs have design needs, whether it's our Facebook pages, whether it's kind of stuff like this, and to have a tool that can be used by just the average user, kind of simplicity of Word, power and functionality of Illustrator is kind of a really good combo. So it's a great paradigm, and early days, but they're getting terrific traction. So we're really excited by that one. So Dan has been working hard with those guys for the last 20 months, Dan.
Yep. Keen to meet Guy Kawasaki as well, Dan.
He's on the list.
And then can I just talk about one, and I'm going to open up to a few questions. Another one, GoCabs.
Yeah.
Right? So was that a strategic thing? Uber coming into the market, and then what was the thing?
Yeah, and that's a relatively small investment. We've got a small investment there, and we really like the space. Really like the space. You've got a kind of if you look at cab charge in some of their markets, i.e. the core cab charge business, they're essentially a monopoly. In some of their other parts of their market, they're kind of an oligopoly with other players. Frankly, they've always behaved like a monopoly. That 10% is kind of pretty crazy, which has now been changed in Victoria and New South Wales by legislation, but they kind of ripped consumers off for a long time. Really frustrating experience booking a cab and going through the dispatch services. Obviously, Uber's been uber successful, pardon the pun, in the US. So we love the space. We feel if you look at the space globally, you have a lot of local players winning markets. So Halo in London, for example, is very, very strong. So we actually feel it's a market that lends itself to local players. So that was kind of the core thesis going into that investment.
Cool. I'm going to open it up to a few questions. Yep. Shout it out.
Yeah, Paul. So just in terms of the two-way market that you've established with Seed, you've talked about the supplier side.
Yeah.
In terms of the consumer side, did you do very much? And the second thing that I just wanted to ask is that I see Seek as Australia's most successful startup. I don't often hear that discussed very much. Is that something that is that a reputation that Seek has intentionally tried to establish?
Oh, look,
Can you recap that, please?
yeah, sorry, did everyone hear that question? So it's really just about how we kind of, the consumer part of what we did and getting the job seekers correct. And secondly, kind of, you know, our perception of Seek in terms of, you know, as one of Australia's most successful startups. Look, on the second part, I mean, I think we were just kind of just doing our job, you know, just like really, really focused. And, you know, every single day, doesn't matter where, as a startup or as the, you know, people talk about, I don't know how many people, probably a lot of people here have got kids, and you talk about little kids, little problems, and big kids, big problems. It's a little bit like that with businesses. And so there's always challenges, there's always things that need to be fixed, there are always things that you can do better. And so, you know, I think to kind of start thinking when you're kind of day-to-day involved in a business, you know, hey, we're doing great and we're Australia's most successful startup or whatever, it's kind of like, that sort of feels like a sort of a short path to failure. And so we were really just focused every day on what we needed to do. You know, being out of the business now for 3 years and not having to worry about that stuff anymore, I mean, you know, absolutely there's a sense of pride in being involved with the business. But it was a large group of people that kind of, you know, came together in a very, very cohesive way, and it worked really well. And, you know, we did a lot of things right, we did a lot of things wrong. We probably got more of the big things right, which I think is super important. Our timing was good, you know, we had a bunch of luck, and it came together, and I think, you know, we were prepared to continue to grow and take risks. The job seeker side, yeah, was super important. So things like 9MSN were very important. We did a bunch of brand marketing about 18 months in. Again, we got lucky. We found an amazing creative, a guy called Ted Horton, who kind of sort of took us under his wing and kind of said, yeah, I'll do some ads for you. And we kind of, it made a really, you know, really good, we got a good bang for our buck. We were pretty quirky with what we did. We were prepared to take risks. And you know, it worked well. So it was a combination of both online and offline marketing. I mean, kind of Google didn't really become important for probably 3 or 4 or 5. It was probably 2002 around then when, say, Google became super important, but it was search, it was distribution through 9MSN, Look Smart, even professional associations like the Law Institute of Victoria and the Institute of Chartered Accountants. All of those kind of relationships and partnerships are really important. And then a very aggressive brand activity on TV that worked really well for us.
Given today, would you seek funding if you were to redo Seek? If you had a strong technical team, or would you? Sorry, say that again. So given what you know today, if you were to redo Seek and you had a strong technical team, would you do it yourself or would you seek funding?
Oh no, we needed funding because, I mean, the build was only part of the cost, and the big part was kind of the sales and marketing and, you know, building out a sales organisation, the partnerships with people like 9MSN, and we were paying them money, the TV advertising. So, no, absolutely, I mean, it was very clear to us that we needed external capital. We had to get big fast. We were competing against companies like News Corp, Fairfax. The winner-take-all dynamics of the market meant that, you know, there was no real prize for second, and therefore we had to be super aggressive, and we absolutely needed the capital to grow.
What do you think about the Instagrams of the world and some of these acquisitions and valuations that are happening now? Just curious.
Yeah, look, it's interesting. When I remember when Instagram was born, it was probably I think it was about, if I've got this right, I think it was about April 2012 for $1 billion. Everyone was like, wow. And I was like, wow, this is a big price. And, you know, and 2 years later, it clearly wasn't a big price. I mean, it was a very, very good call by Facebook. There's no question about it. You know, 19 billion on, you know, I was on a panel yesterday with Mike from Atlassian and Will who runs Facebook in Australia. And he was saying, oh, we feel great about WhatsApp. And how many people here, show of hands, use WhatsApp? I mean, it's pretty amazing. And, you know, I love WhatsApp. I use it regularly. But, you know, he was saying, oh, we feel really good about WhatsApp, and we think we're going to get a 10-fold return. I'm like, gee, that's $190 billion. That's a big number. But, you know, it is a big acquisition price. But the metrics around that business are quite unique. I mean, the growth in users and the stickiness of those users and the I think it's something like 70% of their users come there once or more a day. I mean, that's unheard of. So it's an amazing product, and Facebook is a super aggressive company, and they understand the challenges around their platform. They're kind of I'm saying this from outside. I obviously have no idea what goes on inside, but you get the sense this is a company that kind of understands that their platform will face challenges over the next 10 years. And they're not going to kind of just sit there and be complacent. They're going to build out alternative platforms.
Laura, yeah.
Well,
Sorry, so this is Laura from Scale Investor, guys. We're going to have Laura talk in August. Yeah.
what advice would you give to your fellow non-exec directors of Wesfarmers and their colleagues around investing in the startup space, given large corporations make decisions in a different way and govern in a very different way to what works for startups?
Yeah, the question from Laura was kind of what advice would I give to, say, fellow directors of Wesfarmers and management team around kind of investing in startups. And and the starting point is really hard. I mean, this is a company with a $50 billion market cap. It's got $43 billion of assets, and it's really hard. And it's one of the things I've talked. They've got an arm, Wesfarmers Ventures, and I spent a bit of time with them, and they're great guys. And one of the things I've said to them is, I said, look, let's say you find a great business that costs you $20 million. You put $20 million into a business and you make 10 times your money. $200 million, like for every single one of us, like we would be doing, cartwheels with a triple pollock. And for Wesfarmers, it's kind of like it doesn't, to be frank, it's hard to make a difference. And so the way in which they're going to make a difference is by doing things that add strategic value, that make acquisitions or investments that both have strategic value to the business, to the existing businesses, but also where the human capital that comes into the business kind of really supplements what they've got within their existing business. So I look at a business like Bunnings, which is one of the great, John Gillum, who runs Bunnings, is an extraordinary retailer, and as part of my induction, I had the opportunity to sort of spend a few hours with John in a Bunnings store, and it was just one of the great. I learned more about retailing in those 3 hours than I'd learned shopping for the past 46 years, and it was great. I loved it. But then we started talking about online, and John, by his own admission, doesn't know a lot about online. Now the guy knows more about retailing. He knows more about sourcing. He knows more about supply chain. If they can develop some expertise, if they can acquire, and not specifically Bunnings, but Wesfarmers generally, the opportunity to invest in businesses, take stakes in businesses where there are people who've got skills that are highly complementary to the skills that exist within a Bunnings or a Coles or an Officeworks is really exciting. But look, it's not easy. Just the size makes it difficult, apart from anything else.
I'll take one more question. Yeah. Yeah, you. Sorry.
Hi. Well, now that you're an investor, after creating your own successful startup, are there any common things that you see young business owners face, or certain blocks or blind spots that they have that you as an investor think would be actually valuable for them to overcome?
Yeah, and I think the question was around sort of common challenges or blockages that startups face. And I think that my sense is that every single startup faces a bunch of challenges that are unique to them, and a bunch of challenges that are quite generic in their nature. Challenges around, the single most important challenge for a startup, it's kind of really simple, which is you need to actually establish a demand for your product or service. And so, there's kind of, a group of problems or challenges that I kind of regard as, existential problems or challenges, and then there's a group of challenges I regard as kind of high-class challenges or high-class problems. So a high-class problem is, can you scale this organisation? The truth is, for most startups, the challenge is can I establish that folks want to utilise my product or service? And that's kind of the core of what we all do in a business. Are there people out there who want to, am I solving a problem? Am I solving a problem in a different way to the way in which it's being solved? Because if I'm either solving a problem the same way that someone else is doing it, why are consumers or businesses going to switch from the incumbent to me? Alternatively, if I'm a solution looking for a problem, which frankly happens quite a lot, and certainly happened a lot in 98, 99, 2000, then kind of there's no demand for my product or service. And so that's the single biggest thing. But then there's obviously a bunch of challenges around scaling the organisation, scaling the technology, the challenges of growth, as I said, the high-class challenges. And those are, I think in every case there is unique challenges. Doesn't mean that you can't learn from others' experiences, because there's kind of often analogies can play a role. And then there's very generic challenges, and they're often the people challenges, which are far more generic and super, super important, obviously, to get right.
All right, I want everyone back on their feet. We're going to give a big round of applause to say thank you for Paul for coming.